start with Ian Glasper. You're in Warwound, and what other bands?
Before Warwound, let's go back from the beginning.
Yes.
Started in Ammonia 77, Decadence Within, Burnside, Stampin Ground, Freebase, Betrayed by Many, Flux of Pink Indians, 36 Strategies, and now Warwound.
So you've got a long history with that, and you decided to take that history and transform it into the written word. And you've published so far, what is it, 3 or 4 books?
4 books so far. It was originally going to be 1 book on the UK punk scene of the 80s, because no one had written any books about the 80s punk. It was all about the Sex Pistols, the Damned, the Clash. I wanted to write a book about Discharge, Exploited, GBH, and Crass and Subhumans and Flux, and then I got the idea to maybe split it up into 2 books, because it would have been like just too big a book, because I don't really want to put any more barriers up than there already are, but it was just too big a book. It would have been like 30 quid for this huge book. No one would have been able to buy it, so we split it up into 2 books, and then I started thinking, let's do a trilogy. So we did the UK hardcore book, which was all the UK hardcore bands from the late 80s, and then after that I'm thinking, I can't ruin a trilogy, but I did a 4th book on the 90s punk scene, which is kind of like the punk that time forgot, because, everybody said everyone was down on the 90s, but all these bands kept going and kept the scene alive, so I wanted to sort of pay tribute to those guys. So that's the 4 I've done so far. But I'm doing one on UK thrash metal now as well.
How did the thrash metal come about? Because that's a little different from your previous.
You know what, when I was into punk and hardcore in the mid-80s especially, because I got into it in like the early 80s, but by the mid-80s a lot of bands were crossing over, and I remember hearing like Animosity by COC, the Cause for Alarm album by Agnostic Front with the double kick drums on Eliminator, and I was like, I like this. So then from there it was a short step to like Slayer and Voivod and the Metallica's first and second album and stuff like that. I didn't really see the big barrier between punk and metal. When I first got into punk, it was like, people would sort of, turn their nose up at Judas Priest and stuff like that. But, I was kind of getting into Motorhead and Iron Maiden anyway, and then from there, when I heard Slayer, I was like, this is fucking great. It's faster than Discharge, they can play really well, it's mental, It's...
And proper double bass.
Yeah. So as long as it's energetic, intense, it's got a bit of integrity about it, I'm going to be into it, So so the UK thrash thing, what sort of gave me the idea was a lot of the punk bands that I'd interviewed and the hardcore bands were like crossing over to punk to metal anyway, like the English Dogs and Sacrilege and stuff like that. So it just seemed to make sense. And a lot of these metal bands in this 5th book were in punk bands that were in the 3rd and 4th books. So so it just seemed a natural follow-on for me, and I like writing about the underdog as well. And UK thrash metal is a true underdog scene.
Definitely. As somebody who was highly involved in the US thrash metal scene, very little came from the UK. Yeah. We basically knew of Bolt Thrower, and that was it.
Yeah.
Who would you say some of the shining stars of the American thrash or the UK thrash scene were?
Well, I mean, you had like the big 4 from the States, Anthrax, Slayer, Metallica, and all that, Megadeth. Yes. I suppose if you're looking for a big 4 in the UK, probably be Onslaught, Sabat, Zentrix, and then that last one, it's sort of Slammer or Acid Rain or something like that. There was a lot of good bands, and they were signing to major labels and stuff like that. And a band like Sabat had a sound that was totally unique. It was a very British sound, whereas some of the other bands like Slammer were kind of taking the Bay Area thing and doing it their way, and I don't know whether there was a massive market for a British take on the Bay Area when the Bay Area were doing it so great. But bands like Sabat and Onslaught, who sounded very English, they're my favourite sort of UK.
But on the other hand, when you think about the thrash bands, they took bands like Discharge and all and did it their way as well. So they just took what they heard and created something new out of it. So it's not that far of a stretch for the British bands to do that with the American.
I think the US thrash really came from the new wave of British heavy metal. So all the bands like Venom and Raven and Diamond Head, well, you can see it, all those bands have covered that stuff.
Yes.
And Motorhead, Discharge, like you said. So it goes backwards and forwards across the pond, doesn't it? A lot like the hardcore stuff did. The late 80s UK hardcore stuff was very influenced by Boston and DC and the Californian scene and stuff like that.
And the New York scene as well.
New York, yeah.
What would you say, because you stayed true to the punk roots that you've got, what would you say is your favorite style of music these days?
Anarcho punk.
Why is that?
Always. Because of all the stuff I've ever listened to, that was the stuff that really changed my life and gave me a different perspective on stuff. So bands like Crass, Flux Pink Indians, Subhumans, Anti-Sect, I can always come back to those bands. Rudimentary P, I've been listening to Rudimentary P on the way up here today, Amiga Tribe, and I love all the other stuff. I love GBH Exploited, I love Heresy and Ripcord, all that stuff, but if someone said to me, you've got to choose, it would be the anarcho punk stuff.
And have you thought about writing a book about anarcho punk?
Well, The Day the Country Died was my anarcho punk book, really.
That you consider that your anarcho punk book?
I mean, I could do one. I could do an updated one on the current anarcho punk scene, but I don't know. It takes so much out of you when you're writing a book as well, and I don't really want to write about current stuff because I like the dust to settle on it a little bit. So yes, exactly. So you can look at it with some perspective, and and do it justice.
What would you say your favorite book that you've written is?
Probably the first one, Burning Britain, just because it was the first book, and I love reading and I love books, and to have a book that I wrote on my shelf, was a dream come true, really. Yes, that's probably the one that's closest to my heart, really.
Once you finish the thrash metal book, where do you think you might be going with your writing career?
I don't know. I'd like to write a fiction book, but I don't know. My imagination's a bit out there. I've got plans to do a lyric book of every single lyric I've written since 1982 or 83, and tell the story behind that song. So in all the different bands where I've written lyrics, they all, when I listen to that song or read that lyric, it takes me back to a specific point. So it'd kind of be like an overview of the scene, but from a personal perspective through the lyrics of the songs. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether that might be just a bit self-indulgent. If that's going to be a vanity project, I might not bother. But
well, you could also take your input with your work that you've done, and also talk to others about theirs, and actually make it a compilation of strong lyrics that have made a difference in people's lives and where they came from.
I mean, I've beyond the thrash metal book, I can't think of anything because I've still got another 100,000 words to put away on it. Okay. By the end of the year, and it's just you totally immerse yourself in it. It's 2-3 hours every single night. So yeah, I'm not thinking about the 6th book at the moment.
Yeah. I think the 6th book will be coming.
It'll come.
But let's get 5 out of the way.
After the 4th book, I said I'm never doing it again, and then I did the 5th book. So
Well, it gets in your blood, I think.
Yeah. I don't like to sit around at home watching TV. That's the thing. So I start twiddling my thumbs and
start thinking the creative juices get going, and next thing you know, you're writing another book.
Yeah. Or joining another band.
How many bands are you in currently?
Just one. I made a conscious decision about a year ago. We needed to concentrate on just the one band, just to do it justice. Hello.
I'm a nosy sod.
Midlands punk rock video.
Okay. I wish I could, because I ain't got flipping clue. No, but I do like it though. Go on.
Yeah. A bit of the local flavor. She's going to go have her pizza.
That's why you shouldn't take drugs, kids.
Yes. Just say no. Books, yes. So you're working on number 6, which is taking a lot out of you, I think.
5.
Or 5, rather. I'm talking about number 6.
Yeah.
And it's taking a lot out of you.
Yeah.
It should be out when? Middle of next year, possibly?
April, called Contract in Blood, and it's UK thrash metal.
And who's the publisher?
Cherry Red again. Yeah.
All of your books are on Cherry Red.
And we're doing a 3 CD box set of UK thrash with a track from every single band on the CDs, just as a soundtrack to the book.
So people will be able to buy a package with the book and the CD, or
probably. I mean, they don't come together. It's coming out to coincide with it, but I'm sure Cherry Red will do some
they'll
kind
probably
of
do a package where you can buy the book or the CD or both.
Yeah, some sort of cross promotion or something like that. So.
They did that with Lords of Chaos, at least in the German-speaking market. They had a big box set, which would be nice to see, because I think that's really a great thing, because people can't always hear the songs in their head that you might be writing about, and there they are on a CD.
And we're getting some rare stuff and some demo tracks and unreleased stuff as well, just to make it a bit special if you have already got everything, you know.
So you get something new that maybe you haven't heard before, along with reading about it. What's the most rewarding thing about writing for you?
I just think leaving your mark. I think that's you're leaving something behind. That's what it struck me as. If you leave a book behind or an album, you've made your mark, because you're not here for very long, and you're just a speck of dust.
Yeah, we're just a blip on the radar, basically.
So it's nice to leave your mark and think, other people after you're gone, or other people around the world, people you've never met, can relate to something you've done. So.
And you've captured something, because you're writing factual books, you've captured a moment in time, really.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, was write about all those bands before people forgot about them, because no one else was going to write about the Mau Maus or anyone like that, so I just wanted to just capture that moment for everybody, really, for posterity going forward.
Any advice for aspiring writers out there?
Don't do it. Don't do it. If you've got a vision, go for it. If you've got a dream, pursue it. And what I always say is just be disciplined, be organised, write something every day. Every day you've got to do something to progress the book, otherwise it starts to stagnate. So you've got to keep the momentum going. And you hit a wall about halfway through, you just got to smash through it. And
on that note, I want to say thank you, and we will see you on stage soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for your support. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and you can get his books from Cherry Red or Amazon, and
somewhere else like that.
You can find them. Definitely get them.
Once I've written it, it's like, I don't care what happens to it. Thanks.
Amazon. Try that.
Amazon's a good bet.
Yeah.
Cheers.